against another. And plenty of scientific work has shown that. Sometimes the scientific work takes prints that have been identified in the past by an examiner and kind of gives them back to the same examiner as part of an experiment without the examiner knowing. 80% of the time they change their minds. It's not really science. So what's the response of law enforcement been to all of this? It has not been good. It has been to resist the idea of better practices to change based on science. Now again, not all agencies, but most, I have to say. Let me tell you what they say. What are their reasons for not wanting to do this? Take it from them. Right? That's what I did. Right? 5 things pop up over and over in the statements and the congressional testimony and the interviews I did, and they are these. Number 1, science from laboratories means nothing as far as police work on the street. Police work on the street is different. You can't simulate it. It's all about the feel of the situation and the individual things that are happening. Science has nothing to do with it. Number 2, science is not dependable. It's not dependable, right? How many times you wake up in the morning, flip on TV, and there's, a morning talk show, and somebody's up there saying, "Stop eating eggs, they're terrible for you." And you change the channel, and there's somebody else on a different channel. "Eat all the eggs you can, they're the best thing ever." I mean, it's like, what am I supposed to believe? Science seems to go back and forth like that, which is kind of the nature of the scientific process. We'll talk about that later. But science doesn't seem solid to some folks. And social science, which is a fair amount of this scientific work, oh, give me a break. They don't even accept it as science. If it doesn't have test tubes and beakers and things like that, it's not science. Number 3, it's too expensive to make these kinds of changes. Number 4, you're just saying that law enforcement is corrupt. You're accusing us of being corrupt and doing anything that we can to put people in jail, even if they're not guilty. And number 5, these are just tricks that you have here to benefit the guilty. These are just little tricks for clever defense attorneys. We could have a little discussion about each one of these. What I want to do, just to press forward, is to tell you that when you press on any of these things, and this is all in the book, none of them hold water. It's not about any of this stuff. But I do think I have an idea of what it is about. What's the real reason for this resistance? It's none of this. All right? I think there are 2 main sources for this resistance that we see. Source number 1, or group number 1, would be cognitive barriers. And number 2, institutional and political barriers. All right? So let's talk about cognitive barriers first. All right? When I say cognitive barriers, I'm just saying thinking processes, the process of thinking. And I want to be clear, all human beings have flaws in their thinking processes. And they're common, they're patterns. You can see this. Has anybody read the book Thinking Fast and Slow? I highly recommend this book. It's a great book. You will learn a lot about how human beings think and how their thinking goes wrong. Right? And this is what happens when some of those processes are in effect, but your responsibility is not, say, teaching a class or a seminar or doing whatever you do. It is to be a police officer or a prosecutor. All right? And I think the one that I always want to pick out here is this top one here, cognitive dissonance. Those of you who've taken a psych course, you've certainly heard this term. Cognitive dissonance, this simply means the idea that human beings cannot tolerate indefinitely having 2 opposite truths in their minds. It creates a tension and they have to resolve it. 2 opposite true things can't be, both of them be true, so you have to figure out a way around this. You must resolve that tension. It almost results in a physical kind of feeling that people experience, and they want to resolve it. All right? Example. Let's say I smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day. I don't, but let's say I do. I know because I'm walking around and it's 2013 and it's been 50 years since the Surgeon General's report and everything else. I know this is bad for me. I mean, it causes emphysema, heart disease, lung cancer. It's terrible for the people who live in my house with me. It's terrible for my dog, for God's sake. It's just not a good habit. It's dirty, it's smelly, you burn things, blah, blah, blah. All right? Not good. All right? So I know that at the same time that I smoke 2 packs a day. How do I resolve that? All right? Very bad thing to do, but there I am doing it constantly and paying for the privilege. Right? I have to resolve that cognitive dissonance, that tension. So I figure out a way around it. Well, it helps me when I smoke, it helps me not eat so much. Hurts my appetite. I go for that instead of snacks. And we all know obesity is also a health risk factor. So it evens out. There you go. Right? Or, my old man, he smoked 2 packs a day, and he lived till he was 90. It can't be that dangerous. Issue solved. Right? This is what people do when they get opposing thoughts in their minds. So how does this play itself out in a law enforcement context? Right? You have 2 very strong opposing thoughts. On the one hand, law enforcement thinks of itself as the good guys, the people in the white hats. They're the people who hold the line against thievery and chaos and bloodshed. They put the bad guys in jail. They make it safe for the rest of us. And this is true. Right? They live that life. Right? That is what they are doing. They have every reason to think of themselves that way. On the other hand, we know of 311 times in the last 20 years where we have documented solid evidence that despite the best intentions and using the tactics and the training that they got, things went terribly wrong and innocent people went to jail. It's not provable, but it seems like it's only the tip of the iceberg. All right? How do you resolve that dissonance? Do you say, well, okay, I guess we must be wrong about some of these things. We got to change. It turns out that's not the easiest path or the one that most people take. Instead, it goes like this. 311 convictions wrong over how many years? Do you know how many cases go through the system in a time period like that? This is a tiny problem. Very, very small. Yeah, there's some error, but what system doesn't have error in it? So it's all good. Or 311 cases, see, the system worked. It caught all the mistakes. Right? Dissonance resolved. Right? This is the way human beings think. And when you have the responsibility of law enforcement as a police officer, as a prosecutor, this can lead you down the wrong path and cause catastrophic problems with individual people and groups. Other things in the cognitive barrier ideas, group polarization, you get people's opinions pulled to the extreme when they get together in groups. And there's no group that is more cohesive, more likely to be with each other, more likely to share things with each other than police officers. It's a social system. It is a society. It is a closed group for the most part. So lots of this stuff explains why change is very hard. What about the institutional and political barriers? We can come back to any of these if you want during Q&A. Every person in human society works within a system, a political system, a social system, an institutional system. Very few of us in this life work completely alone and have nobody to whom we are responsible. That's a rare experience in these days. Right? So when you work within an institution, you respond to the institutional incentives that exist. Right? Those incentives in law enforcement are very clear and have been clear for years. For police and prosecutors, they have matching what I call imperatives. For police, it's the imperative of closing cases through arrest. Closing cases through arrest. For prosecutors, the matching imperative is convictions. Right? If you want to advance in the police department, if you want to be promoted, if you want a pay raise, if you want a better duty assignment, if you want to be a detective, if you want to move up in the organization, have a good career, and be looked at as a good officer, a cop's cop, in the phrase that I've heard over and over, you better be out there making arrests. That's the way it's done. That's how it works in police departments near and far. For prosecutors, it's all about your convictions. Right? Some prosecutors' offices will tell you, so-and-so, really respected prosecutor, has a 950 batting average. I mean, they want to keep statistics. Down in Texas for a while, when they were handing out incredible sentences, there was really competition between prosecutors in Dallas as to who could get the longest sentences, not only the convictions. So it's a competitive world. If you want to be looked upon as the person that had the homicide unit, if you want to move up, if you want to be a unit chief in the prosecutor's office, get convictions. Get convictions. That's the way to move up. These things